Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our Reacher Season 2, Episode 5 reaction and review. We're lucky we made it here. We heard that there was a building we were supposed to go into, but
Okay.
okay, there we go.
You're pretty good, yeah.
A very accurate impression of the end of this episode of Reacher.
Listen, the last review, I was pretty hard on Russo, but he turned me around in this episode because, like Russo, I am also an Aqua fan. I love Aquaman. The minute that he dropped that, I was just like, I didn't think I could be turned around on you, but here we are, we're besties now.
As a fellow bald man, I really wanted to root for you, Russo, and you mostly redeemed yourself in this episode. You had some good moments. My favorite lines of this episode are Russo telling Reacher, "Oh, so you want to drive?" and Reacher saying yes, and then immediately grabbing it, which probably has no realm of actual realism in that end of that car chase scene whatsoever.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, it was just so good.
Yeah,
Like truly so good. I absolutely loved that car chase
yeah.
scene with Reacher and Russo in the car. I'm completely turned around on Russo.
Yeah, as a legally blind person who cannot get a driver's license, I'm always just like really amused by watching the ways in which TV shows have people go crazy while driving cars.
I'm sure you also like the line then, are you driving blind?
Listen, I
I heard
tried.
that and I was like, oh, Matt's gonna have fun with that.
Yeah, I tried once to get like a learner's permit, and I was like doing the training, and they just sort of looked at me and were like, "Yeah, this probably isn't going to work out for you." Which I'm happier to know in advance, but we are happy to dive all into this action-packed, pretty crazy episode, but also raising some big questions. Is Swan actually, betraying the team? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to dive pretty deep into that because they are laying out a lot of groundwork to make us think that maybe he's dirty. And I mean, even Reacher now is thinking maybe possibly this could be a thing. But I have a tinfoil hat theory for you guys of what I actually think
Mm.
is going on here. But before we get into that, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's a great way to support Matt and I
Mhm.
here at the channel. And that way you also don't miss any of our Reacher coverage.
Also, Reacher live streams every week on our Patreon. Join it by checking out that link in the description below. We have so much fun talking about Reacher. And thank you as well to everyone who has already joined.
All right, let's get into the biggest question about Swan. Is he betraying the team or
Okay.
not? Is he part of this or not? Okay. I've been dying on the hill that one of Reacher's group that he is working with, O'Donnell, is dirty.
Mhm.
That when we first saw him, he was in Neely's hotel room and it was already trashed. He was like, I found it like this. I was like, that doesn't seem right. And they
Mhm.
spent an awful lot of time in this episode with him at his house with his wife, with his kids. He's settled. He's such a good guy. I was just like, oh, stop. You're really like fanning the flames of what a good guy O'Donnell is. And I may take an L on this. He may be fine. He may be a good guy. But I'm starting to feel like after what we saw in this episode with everything with Swan and the shootout at the cemetery, where he was like, oh, I was hired by Swan to come and get you. I was just
Mhm.
like, sure you were. Sure you were. I feel like, here's my tinfoil hat
All
on,
right, all right.
that it's somebody like O'Donnell was working either with Swan or had information on Swan, because the thing that O'Donnell said a couple episodes ago is that he is really good at getting information on people that they don't want out there, and that he's very good at manipulating people with information. So is it possible that he is manipulating Swan to get this going and he is actually part of all of this? And how, when it was like, oh, Swan is the person that, hired us, O'Donnell could have easily been on the phone like, yo, I'm Swan. I want you to, shoot out at everybody. But, it doesn't look like me because I'm there. It's just, I don't know. I just have this feeling in my gut that O'Donnell is involved in this. I feel it.
I think there's a chance. I was fully on the idea that Dixon was in on it. I am fully out on Dixon being in on it at this
She
point.
might be.
I
She
feel
could have made that call too.
she could have made that call, and she's obviously very skilled. I just feel like after everything I have seen her go through within this episode, especially all the stuff that her and Neely did in Colorado, which was I could have used more of that. Could we have another couple of minutes? Could we have Neely coming out of a trunk again for another couple of minutes?
I love Neely so much. She is hands down my favorite character on this show.
She's great, and I think it's because I want to root for Dixon to also be great. I'm trying to convince myself that that's not really a thing. Where I'm landing right now, and maybe this is too surface level, is that okay, maybe Swan really is dirty, and maybe this storyline is all about Reacher having to accept that he doesn't know somebody as well as he thinks he does. Because Reacher, for all of his various strengths, and by that I mean strengths, that was terrible. That was not good. Okay, no, but for all of his strengths, it makes sense that the guy's got to have some flaws here or there. And one of the things this show does is he's pretty much right about almost everything, almost every single second of the day. I think it would be very interesting to have like him have to face a glaring omission with somebody that he is really responsible for bringing in to help the train, to sort of put them in this position to succeed, and then sort of sit back and be like, okay, why didn't this happen? Is it my fault? And the answer to that is no. Swan is an adult. Swan makes his own decisions. Reacher is not responsible for anything that happens after the fact. But I think there's an interesting sort of mental character study that could come as a result of all of that, and to kind of break down these massive chiseled walls of Jack Reacher and actually start to get at like that vulnerability underneath.
Yeah, I agree. The Jack Reacher is a character that is pretty much always right. He's
Yeah.
always 10 steps ahead of everybody. He knows what's going on. He really is right about a lot. And that's fine. It's fun to watch characters that are like that, but it would be very interesting if Swan actually was dirty, or he was being forced to be dirty in some sort of way that then goes against what Reacher really felt. Like, that was one of the things I loved about seeing this episode was by the end, when the guy was like, oh, I wasn't hired by that guy. I was hired by someone named Swan. Like, the look on his face was just like, oh no, like someone that I am so positive about may not be what I think they are. And I think it is important to the development of his character. Whether or not Swan turns out to be fine or not at the end of this is irrelevant at this point,
Mhm.
because it has already got Reacher looking inwards to really be, how well do I know people really?
Yeah, and he clearly wants to do his best to see, like, okay, I know everybody in the 110th. I was the boss. I was the leader. I was somebody who helped to bring them along their way. So
Yeah.
he could end up second guessing a lot of that. And it was fun within this episode to sort of see him actually realize that he was wrong about Russo, who, amidst referencing Aquaman and making you very happy, there was like a very lengthy back and forth in here about, you're dirty. No, I'm not. No, you are. No, I'm not. And it went back and forth for a little while, but Russo showed him with his actions that, okay, he may not do everything in the way that Reacher likes, but that doesn't mean that he's bad at his job, and that doesn't mean that he is working with the bad guys. Like, he's clearly trying to get at the same thing, and I think maybe that is just sort of a tiny example of something that this show is building towards a little bit more.
And there was this really nice moment of trust between them where, Russo was like, oh, we're just going to arrest this guy. And Reacher's like, if we do that, A, B, and C is going to happen. So, you can just turn away and let this happen, or you can make it more miserable where we don't get anything. And to see Russo actually just be like, okay, and turn his back away from the situation, it was just so good to see these two like cowboying together kind of thing, where Russo really realized that what Reacher was saying made a lot of sense, and this was the way.
I kind of feel like, maybe this is just my own dream scenario, is that Reacher needs to slowly, over the course of what is hopefully 20 seasons, get like one of these guys in every single city. Like, he's got Finley in Boston. Can he get Russo in New York? I want to see his LA guy. I want to expand this out. Now, what we also learned in this episode, and I think this is pretty valuable, is a little bit of backstory about how Shane and a lot of the cohorts at New Age ended up being in that spot.
Yeah.
That they were all bad cops once
Mhm.
upon a time. And that's mostly just important to me because I feel like a lot of these shows, they will construct these like evil organizations of like evil people who somehow just magically appear in these places. And it's never really a question of like, okay, well, how did you get your training? How did you become
Mhm.
qualified in all of this? And of course, if these people were dirty cops at once upon a time, like
Mhm.
they know how to handle dangerous situations, they know how to deal with people and be confrontational. And clearly, confrontation is one of Shane's favorite things to do based on what we've seen so far.
And that's the thing too, is that if it's a bunch of, bad cops have all gotten together and they're doing this and they were like, "Oh, but there was one person
Mhm.
who wasn't and it was Swan who was, this more military cop." That is he then dirty or did he fall into this where he thought everyone was okay and then realized later that wasn't the case?
I
It's hard to know because we did have some flashback again where Swan saved Reacher in a situation that they were in, but it's kind of like, okay, yeah, he saved him in that, but he was also trying to save himself, and Reacher was trying to save him as
yeah,
well as himself. Like they were in it together, and that's great and everything, but it's just like, okay, was he being benevolent to be like, let me save you, Reacher? Like, I don't know.
they've done a really good job with this mystery this season because
Yeah.
we haven't read the books. Don't spoil the books if you have, but
No.
I think what makes this exciting is that if you haven't read the books, you're probably just like us. You want to see things the way that Reacher is seeing them, or you want to believe the people that you're close to, but there's a lot of red flags. Like there is basically, all the people who work in air traffic who are like waving the flags on the runway. That is, we're all on the runway and these people are waving all these flags around Swan and we're trying to kind of come to grips with all of it because there's a couple of different questions here. What's going on with Swan? Is he dirty or not? But then kind of regardless, can you actually stop what's in motion? Because what's in motion, O'Donnell should have just said it to his wife. It's like a 20 out of 10 at the end of the day here.
Is it though for him? Because if he's dirty and, my tinfoil hat
Yeah.
is coming into play, then O'Donnell would be somewhere up high and he may not be in danger after all. And that's why maybe he was like, it's a 4. Like, I'm going to get you out of here. Yeah, some things are hitting the fan right now on my side of things, the dirty side of things, but I'm higher up in this, so I'll be able to figure it out. I am probably wrong about this, and I'm happy to take an L at the end of this. It just feels very like they're laying out some
Mhm.
breadcrumbs that I'm eating up, being like, why were you in Neely's tossed over hotel room being like, I found it like this?
There's a lot of questions around this guy, and I have a lot of questions just around who is the final boss of this season? Is it Shane? Is it AM? Because,
Mm.
well, this is the thing. Shane is like the person with the position of power. AM is the person who actually has the capabilities of power. AM is far more dangerous. AM is like so much more captivating in that this character walks on screen and you don't know whether or not he's about to kill everybody within like a 10-mile radius.
Yeah, he's really scary. Like, I think Shane is just a moving part. I think everybody at New Age are just moving parts. I think AM is really the big bad. He's the final boss.
Like I just picture at the end of this finale, we're going to see like Reacher doing fisticuffs with somebody, and AM is probably the more interesting person in a lot of ways, just because we've already seen what AM is capable of.
Yep.
I just really hope that they're going to find a way to connect everything in the amount of time that's left. 3 episodes just isn't a lot of time left here. This is not a super long season. Like they got to find a way to really connect everything, explain what Swan is doing. If I had one criticism of this episode, it's
Mhm.
also just that we had all this time spent on Dixon early on and Dixon's relationship with Reacher and all of that. She's basically just kind of there on the show now. She doesn't really have anything to do but take part in the missions. It's like, oh, she was kind of a love interest. They're a little like, what's going on here now, guys?
That's always been kind of the interesting thing about this show this season and last season as well, where it's kind of like they hook Reacher up fairly early on in the season, and then it's not really a thing after that. It's like it's a device to get Reacher's shirt off, is really what it is. You know, they've got this big muscly guy. They want him without a shirt on. How you gonna make that happen?
Yeah.
Throw in a love interest. Boom, they're in the shower, they're in the hotel room, whatever it is. I think they don't need to have love interests for him or hookups for him or whatever. You could find another way for him to have his shirt off.
Maybe he's just had a very long day at the gym, or maybe he's just like spent a day at the gym, because I'm not sure that he has a consistent gym membership because he's always traveling to different places.
Exactly.
So the other thing in this episode, it's just the congressman, like everything that's going on there, it really just doesn't work for me. Like I just don't understand why we needed to have something like that in this, because it's like, okay, there's low hanging fruit, and then
Mhm.
there's like fruit that's hanging so low you can't even see it in the video anymore. It's just
Oh.
like, okay, come on, guys. Congressmen don't get any work done. It's just it's too easy for this show, and I know you like to make obvious jokes sometimes, and I'm not sitting on here trying to defend government institutions. It's just that nothing this show can do in this realm is going to ever be anywhere near as ridiculous as what we have seen either in other political shows or in real life. Like, let's just be real about it. So it just I just felt like when I was watching that, all right, can we get to the other side of this? Can we just move forward?
Yeah, I felt like the jokes just fell a little flat, which is very weird for this show because this show, the jokes just hit like every time they hit, and they're so funny. This show, for it being an action show, really, this show makes me laugh so much. Like the delivery, the lines,
Mhm.
like they're put together so well. So, yeah, when we had this whole scene with the congressman and everything that was going on, yeah, these types of jokes, I was like, I've heard these kind of jokes before. The show is funnier than that. The show is better than that. Like, unless this congressman is coming in to like really help with something at the end, there's enough other stuff going on right now that I don't need the congressman storyline at all. I've got so much other
Mhm.
stuff going on with all the flashbacks, plus Reacher working with this crew now, plus Russo, plus, everything that's going on with New Age, with Swan. Like, I don't need this guy.
The Swan mystery to me is the most compelling thing that this show is doing, and that's because you've got all these characters looped into it who are all close to Reacher or were close to Reacher, and let's hope we see more of that. But we'll tie everything up here. But be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other Reacher coverage.
Mhm.
Thank you to our patrons as well for your
Thank you.
support, and we'll see you here next time.